Hello, friends. Welcome to the Endless History Journey. We'll tell you a story about real life in colonial America. Imagine a time when the very idea of comfort was a luxury few could afford. It's early America, sometime in the late 1600s or early 1700s, and life is a constant struggle for survival. There are no modern conveniences, no electricity to light the long, cold nights, no running water to quench thirst or wash away the grime of a hard day's work. The houses are small, made of logs or rough-hewn timber, and the windows are either tiny or completely absent. There's no glass to let the light in, only wooden shutters that provide some shelter from the biting cold and the relentless winds. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke from fireplaces constantly flickering in an attempt to ward off the cold. Every breath you take is sharp, filled with the chill of the environment. You can hear the constant crunch of snow beneath boots, the rustling of wind through bare trees, and the distant calls of birds as they prepare for the coming winter. Nature here is unforgiving, and every aspect of life seems dictated by it. The weather is harsh, the land often unyielding, and survival requires a daily, unwavering effort. Despite these harsh conditions, the people around you do not despair. There's a sense of quiet determination in the air, as each person finds their place in this relentless world. You see it in the way they move, the way they work together to achieve what must be done to live through another season. It's in their eyes, steady with the knowledge that life here is tough, but it is life nonetheless. Here, the spirit of resilience is not just an abstract concept. It's woven into every action, from the way the fire is carefully tended, to the way the crops are harvested, to the way families support each other through the bitterest of winters. People are not just surviving, they are living, finding small joys amidst the struggle. In this world, the comforts we take for granted are non-existent. There's no electric light to flick on when night falls, no tap to turn for a quick drink of water. You must walk to the well, often in the bitter cold, and haul water in heavy wooden buckets. Every drop is precious, every task, a reminder of how far we've come from the conveniences of modern life. The cold is ever present, especially in winter. The wooden houses, though sturdy, are drafty, and even the warmest clothes seem to do little to keep the chill at bay. People wear layers of wool and rough linen, often mended and patched from constant use. There is no fast fashion here, only necessity, practicality, and resilience. Daily life is defined by hard labor. Whether you're working the fields, tending to animals, or maintaining your small home, there is no end to the work that must be done. Every task requires manual effort, from chopping wood for the fire to growing and harvesting food. It's a life built on cooperation, where each member of the family or community plays an integral role in ensuring survival. The elderly might share stories around the hearth, while the younger generation works the fields or keeps an eye on livestock. There's little room for idleness here. Work is constant and essential. But despite the long hours of back-breaking labor, there's a certain beauty to the simplicity of this life. People learn to make do with what they have, whether it's repurposing scraps of wood to build furniture or preserving food for the harsh winters. There's an unspoken camaraderie among neighbors. Too, when someone is in need, the community is quick to help. That sense of mutual reliance is a lifeline, especially in an environment that is so demanding. And while the struggles are real, so is the sense of accomplishment that comes from working with one's hands to meet the basic needs of life. The primary theme that defines life in early America is survival. Survival in a world that doesn't offer the comforts of modern technology. Every day is a battle against the elements, the land, and the relentless demands of living off the earth. There are few luxuries, but there is a great deal of resourcefulness. Every task, no matter how small, is vital to ensuring survival. There is no room for wasted effort, and every person has a role to play. In this world, hard physical labor becomes the cornerstone of daily life. With each action, a cut of wood, a meal prepared over a fire, a piece of clothing mended contributing to the fragile fabric of survival. Another central theme is the interconnectedness of the community. The strength of this world lies not just in individual endurance, but in the reliance on one another. Families help each other with the harvest, neighbors share tools, and even the harshest winters become bearable with the help of others. In this world, everyone contributes, and survival often depends on the collective effort of the entire community. Whether it's lending a hand during harvest time or offering support during a difficult winter, the bond between people is a key to navigating life in these challenging times. Through the lens of this historical reality, we begin to see how the resilience of the people who lived in early America was not just about surviving the physical environment, but also about thriving in a world that required so much from each individual. As you listen, you'll come to understand the depth of the determination and hope that existed in these communities. A quiet strength that defined their way of life and laid the foundation for what would become a new nation. As the first light of dawn peeks through the narrow gaps in the shutters, you awaken. The room is still dark, the air thick with the chill of the early morning. You lay there for a moment, disoriented, feeling the cold press against your skin. The dampness of the room seems to seep into the very bones, making every movement feel sluggish, every breath a little more laborious. The heat of the fire from last night has long since died, leaving only the faint, dying embers that barely keep the cold at bay. You can feel the weight of the night's cold pressing down on you as you try to shake off the remnants of sleep. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed, and your feet meet the cold, unyielding earth. The floor, not the wooden planks or stone tiles you might expect, is simply packed dirt. Cold as stone, it's as if the earth beneath you has hardened over time, becoming a solid reminder of the harshness of the world you live in. Each step you take is a shock to your system, a stark reminder of the discomforts that greet you the moment you open your eyes. The bed, if you can call it that, offers no comfort. It's a crude, homemade structure, nothing like the soft, luxurious mattresses people dream of today. It's a wooden frame with ropes strung across it, and on top of that, a thin mattress filled with straw or corn husks. But the straw has already shifted and settled, leaving deep, uncomfortable indentations in the middle. You can feel the roughness of the material against your back, every piece of straw poking through the coarse cloth, a constant discomfort that reminds you that this is no place for rest. You lay there, trying to adjust, but the sensation never quite fades. No matter how you shift, the bed is always too hard, too cold. A subtle ache in your body is the price of sleep, and you know there is no getting away from it. You stand up, your body creaking with every movement. The stiffness is an old friend, something you've grown used to. The chill of the floor doesn't help. Your bare feet are numb within moments, and your legs feel heavy as if the night has drained you of energy before the day has even begun. You're awake now, but not ready, never ready, for what lies ahead. The warmth of your blanket feels like a memory you're already losing. It was once a small comfort, but now it feels too distant to reach. The light outside is still dim, the sun struggling to break through the haze of a cloudy sky. But that doesn't matter here. In this world, the day begins as soon as you open your eyes. No matter the light, you've already wasted precious moments lying still in bed. Every minute counts, especially when survival is at stake. Every day is a test of endurance, and rest is a luxury you cannot afford. The first thing you must do is start the fire. The hearth is the heart of your home, the source of warmth and light. Without it, you would be nothing but cold and darkness. You walk to the fireplace, your movements slow but deliberate, feeling the scrape of your worn boots against the dirt floor. The fire, what little of it remains, is a smoldering collection of ash and coal. The warmth it once gave is now a memory, one that seems to be fading with each passing moment. You kneel by the hearth and begin the laborious task of rekindling the fire. You gather the remnants of yesterday's kindling, small twigs, dried leaves, and any scrap of wood you can find. The fire might not start easily today, and you know it could take longer than usual. The air is damp from the night, and that makes everything more difficult. You strike the flint and steel, your hands stiff from the cold, and after several attempts, the spark catches. You feed the fire slowly, adding small sticks and watching carefully as the flames flicker to life. The warmth is slow to come, but it's there, and it's something you can hold on to. As the fire grows, you feel the heat begin to push against the cold, but it's still not enough. The room remains chill, and the bones of the house, the walls made of rough-hewn timber and stone, seem to hold the cold as if they are as much a part of winter as the frost outside. You move to the kitchen area, if you can even call it that. The kitchen is simply the far corner of the room where the fire resides, where the food is prepared and the heat is gathered. There are no counters, no modern appliances. It's all basic, functional, and hard work. The fireplace dominates the room, and you set to work, preparing what little food you have for the day ahead. The smell of burning wood fills the air as the fire continues to crackle. It's a comforting smell, one that will fill your home with heat throughout the day. You fill a pot with water, setting it over the fire, the steam rising as the water heats. It won't be long before you're able to cook something, even if it's just a small, simple meal to get you through the first few hours. The morning is always the same, cold, uncomfortable, and full of tasks. There's no time for luxuries like breakfast in bed or leisurely sips of coffee. In fact, coffee isn't something you would have even if you could. The wealthy may have access to such indulgences, but for most, it's whatever can be made from the land. And today that means cornmeal mush or a thin porridge. It's enough to fill your stomach, but it's not much more than that. You stir the pot, the thick, starchy liquid bubbling as it warms. The scent of the cornmeal begins to fill the house, the earthy smell mixing with the wood smoke and the lingering cold. It's a simple meal, a humble meal, but it's one that will keep you going for a few hours. The sounds of the household begin to stir. You hear the creak of the floorboards as someone else in the family rises. Maybe it's the woman of the house, always the first to start the day, or perhaps it's a child eager to help with the chores. Everyone here knows their role, knows what needs to be done. The work is never ending. From dawn until dusk, there are always tasks to accomplish. No one gets to rest for long, not while there's food to gather, animals to tend, and wood to chop. The day ahead is already shaping up, and you know it will be just like the last. It will be filled with hard work, small moments of satisfaction, and a constant drive to survive. The fire crackles, the warmth slowly creeping across the room, and for a moment, you feel the smallest sense of peace. You are alive, and that is enough for now. But there is more work to be done. You must eat, you must prepare for the day, and you must continue to fight against the cold and the elements. This is life in early America, in the colonies, and it is a life of survival. A life where each small comfort is earned, and each task is vital to the very continuation of the day. As the morning progresses, the fire grows brighter, and you feel the heat on your back as you move around. The harsh realities of the world outside have yet to fully set in, but for now, With your stomach filled and the fire warming your bones, you're able to take a small moment to breathe. Just for a moment. The day waits for no one, and neither does the struggle for survival. You wake to the sound of the wind howling outside, a cold, biting gust that seems to creep through every crack and crevice of the house. The small room you sleep in offers little protection against the elements. No glass in the windows, just thin wooden shutters that barely keep the rain from coming inside. The wooden walls creak and groan with the cold, and you can feel the chill in the air seeping into your bones, no matter how tightly you curl up under the rough wool blanket. The lack of glass windows is the first thing that hits you each morning. While the wealthy may have the luxury of glass windows rare and expensive in the colonies, most homes like yours have only wooden shutters or, at best, oiled paper that lets in a soft, diffused light, but does nothing to block out the harsh cold. The wind whistles through the cracks, and you can feel the frost on the inside of the shutters when you push them open. It's a constant battle against the elements, and today, like every other day, the cold wins. The room is dim, the only light coming from the small sliver of daylight that creeps around the edges of the shutters. There's no warmth to greet you when you wake, just the relentless cold of a house that doesn't know how to keep its inhabitants warm. You stand up slowly, the ache in your back from sleeping on the rough wooden frame still there, a constant reminder of the night before. The floor is made of packed earth, hard and unyielding beneath your feet. No matter how much straw or corn husks are packed into the bed, there's no escaping the discomfort that comes with trying to sleep in such conditions. You stand there for a moment, feeling the cold seep into your feet as you wait for your body to adjust to the temperature. The hearth, the only source of heat in the house, lies dormant in the corner. It's a small stone structure, the stone cold to the touch, its blackened, soot-streaked walls a reminder of the countless fires that have kept the house alive over the years. You can still feel the faint warmth left over from last night's fire, but it's barely enough to take the edge off the cold that surrounds you. You know that it's your first task of the day to get the fire going again, but the cold air presses down on you, making it hard to get moving. You cross the room, shivering with each step, and kneel by the hearth. The fire has long since died, leaving nothing but a pile of ash and half-burned coals. There's no instant comfort here, no flick of a switch to turn on the heat. It takes real work to get the fire going again. First, you gather the wood, small twigs, dried leaves, and the leftover kindling from yesterday. It's a slow, careful process as you try to ignite the embers that remain. You strike the flint and steel, trying to coax a spark into life. The sound of the metal scraping against the rock is sharp, and for a moment, you wonder if it will ever catch. Finally, a spark flies, and with it comes a tiny flame. You blow on it gently, urging it to grow. The fire catches slowly, the thin wood crackling as the flames begin to lick at the kindling. The warmth begins to spread, and you can feel the heat on your hands as you feed the fire. Slowly but surely, it grows, a tiny flame in the face of the unrelenting cold. But even with the fire crackling, the warmth doesn't come instantly. The house has been cold for too long, the dampness of the earth and the walls too pervasive for the fire to have an immediate effect. You watch as the flames flicker, casting shadows on the walls, but the room still feels uninviting. You can feel the chill in your fingers as you kneel by the hearth, but there's nothing to be done except to keep adding wood, to keep feeding the fire until it becomes something you can rely on. There's no modern heating system to fall back on here, no furnace to keep the house warm. Everything you do, every piece of wood you add, is an act of survival. Once the fire is going, you begin to think about the next essential task: water. In colonial America, there's no tap to turn on, no water flowing through pipes into your home. Instead, you must go to the well or the stream to fetch water for drinking, cooking, cleaning. Every drop has to be carried, bucket by bucket, from its source to the house. It's a back-breaking task, one that requires multiple trips a day. Even if you're lucky enough to live near a stream or a well, it doesn't make it any easier. The morning air is damp, and the frost from the night before clings to everything. You wrap your shawl tighter around your shoulders as you step outside, feeling the cold bite at your face. The well is just outside, a short walk from the house, but the chill is enough to make it feel much farther. Your boots crunch in the frost-covered grass as you make your way to the well. There's no modern pump here, just a simple wooden bucket attached to a rope, a pulley system to haul the water up from the depths below. You lower the bucket, listening to the sound of the rope sliding through the pulley, and wait as it descends. The water is cold, colder than you remember, but it's fresh and it's necessary. You pull the bucket up, filling it with as much water as you can carry, and make the trek back to the house. The weight of the bucket presses into your arms, and you can feel the strain in your muscles as you walk. The task seems endless, each trip to the well, a small but necessary part of the day. Water is the lifeblood of the household, but it's also a reminder of how dependent you are on the land. It doesn't come to you. You have to go out and take it. Once the water is in, the next task is preparing food. There's no stove, no modern kitchen appliances. The fire is your oven, your stove, your means of cooking. The meal for today will likely be a simple one, perhaps porridge or a bit of stew left over from yesterday. You fill the pot with water and set it over the fire. The flames lick at the bottom, slowly bringing the water to a boil. But the meal won't cook quickly. Everything takes time in this world. Nothing is instantaneous. Nothing is effortless. You'll have to wait, constantly adding small pieces of wood to the fire to keep the heat up. As the water begins to boil, you add the cornmeal, stirring slowly as it thickens. The pot is heavy in your hands, and the smell of the cornmeal begins to fill the house. It's a simple, humble meal, no spices, no seasonings, but it's nourishing, and it's enough to keep you going for the day ahead. The fire continues to crackle in the background, the only source of warmth in the house. You stand there, stirring the pot, the faint glow of the fire lighting the room. There's a sense of peace here, a calm in the face of so much hardship. The day ahead will be full of work, more water to fetch, more chores to complete, more wood to gather. But in this moment, you're alive, you're warm, and you've survived another morning. In colonial America, there are no modern conveniences to rely on. Every task, from the moment you wake up to the moment you rest your head at night, is a fight for survival. There's no hot water at the tap, no soft bed to sink into, no warm, luxurious clothing to keep you comfortable. But there is the fire, there is the earth, and there is the simple, unspoken bond between people who have to work together to stay alive. It's hard, it's demanding, but it's also beautiful in its simplicity. And somehow, amid all the struggles, there's a strength, a quiet determination to keep going, to keep living, to keep surviving, day after day. And as you sit by the fire, waiting for the food to cook, you realize something important. This is life, raw and unfiltered. This is what it means to survive in a world that doesn't offer shortcuts, but instead asks for everything you've got. You wake before the sun, as you have every day for as long as you can remember. The world outside is still dark, but already you can hear the faint sounds of the household stirring. The creak of wooden beams, the shuffle of bare feet on the cold dirt floor, the hushed murmur of voices speaking in low tones. The day of labor is about to begin. And it starts before dawn, because the work never ends. The fire that kept the house warm through the night has died down to embers. It's your first job, to rekindle the flames that will cook your food, warm your body, and light the way through the long day ahead. You throw a few small pieces of wood onto the coals, waiting for the spark to take. The fire flickers, hesitant at first, but then it catches, the warmth spreading through the room, the crackling sound a small comfort against the still, biting air. The light from the fire spills across the room, revealing the cramped utilitarian space. There's no space for privacy, no room for comfort. It's just a single room, a space where everyone, parents, children, animals, share their lives. You can already hear your siblings stirring, the shuffle of their feet across the floor. They too know that the day has begun. You take a deep breath and step away from the hearth. The air is still cold, and your bare feet sting as they hit the dirt floor. There's no warmth to meet you, just the chill that permeates everything. You dress quickly, pulling on your rough woolen trousers and jacket, the same ones you've worn for days. The fabric itches against your skin, but there's no time for comfort. There's work to be done. The first task of the day is always the same. You step outside into the dark, the earth still cold beneath your feet. The sky is faintly tinged with the first hints of dawn, but there's no light yet. The sun won't rise for hours. Your family depends on the farm to survive, so you head toward the fields, toward the crops that need tending. The fields are vast, stretching far beyond what your eyes can see in the dim morning light. There's wheat to harvest, corn to gather, and endless rows of vegetables that need to be checked for pests, watered, and cared for. But the work doesn't wait for the sun to rise. The early morning light is the best time to work, before the heat of the day sets in. You and your siblings head out with tools in hand spades, hoes, and sickles and begin your labor. The ground is cold and hard beneath your feet, the soil still damp from the morning dew. You can feel the strain in your legs as you bend to cut at the crops, to pull up the weeds that threaten to choke the plants. Each task is repetitive, each action a necessary part of the whole. The work is slow and laborious, but it's a rhythm you've come to know well. You cut, pull, plant, water all day long. Your father, a seasoned farmer, walks the fields with you, inspecting the crops with a practiced eye. He checks for signs of disease, for weeds that need to be removed, for the subtle changes that can make the difference between a good harvest and one that fails. The work is constant and unyielding. Even as you work, you know there's more waiting for you, always more. But the work isn't just about tending the crops, it's about survival. Every task, every hour spent in the fields, is a step toward making sure there's food on the table when winter comes. You know the dangers of relying on a single harvest. If the crops fail, if the weather turns against you, if the animals fall ill, it could mean the difference between life and death. You've seen it happen before. You've watched the neighbors lose everything when their crops didn't make it. It's a constant fear that lingers in the back of your mind. The morning passes slowly, the work unrelenting. Your back aches from bending. Your hands are raw from the rough wood of the tools and the earth itself. Your stomach growls, a reminder that breakfast isn't yet ready, that food is still hours away. You keep working, though. There's no stopping, no pause in the work that needs to be done. As the sun begins to rise, you can feel the warmth on your face, but it's still not enough to banish the chill from your bones. The day stretches before you, and there's no time to rest. Your younger siblings join you, bringing with them baskets for collecting the vegetables you've harvested. They're small, but they've been taught to work, just as you were. They help gather, help carry, help do whatever they can, knowing that their contributions are essential to the family's survival. The day stretches on, and the work continues. You move from the fields to the barn to check on the animals. There are cows to milk, chickens to feed, and pigs to tend to. The barn is always colder than the house, a dampness in the air that settles into your bones. But there's no time to complain. The animals must be cared for, fed, and protected. If one of them gets sick, it could mean the loss of a vital source of food. You hear the familiar sounds of the animals, the low moo of a cow, the clucking of chickens, the grunting of pigs, and you go about your work, feeding them, giving them fresh water, making sure they're healthy. There's no room for negligence in this life. Every task is important, and every action counts. As you work, the rest of the household begins to stir. Your mother is already preparing breakfast in the small, smoky kitchen. It's a simple meal, probably porridge made from cornmeal, but it's filling and essential. You can already smell the warmth of the food drifting through the house, a welcome scent after a long morning of hard labor. Once the animals are taken care of, you head inside to eat, your stomach already aching with hunger. The meal is simple, but it's enough to keep you going. You sit with your family around the hearth, the fire crackling in the background as you eat in silence. Everyone is tired, their faces drawn with the effort of the day's work, but there's a quiet satisfaction in the air. You've made it through another morning, another set of tasks, and you're ready to face whatever comes next. The day ahead is filled with more work, more fields to tend, more chores to complete, more labor to endure. But for now, you sit by the fire, the warmth filling you, and you know that this is life. This is what it means to survive, to work for every bit of food, to rely on each other for survival. There's no luxury here, no comfort beyond what you've earned with your sweat and toil. And yet, despite the exhaustion, despite the never-ending work, there's a sense of pride in it. You've done your part, and your family has done theirs. Together, you make this life work, no matter how hard it is. It's a rhythm you've learned, one that beats with the sun and the seasons, and you know it will carry you through whatever comes next. As you sit near the hearth, the warm glow of the fire flickers against the stone walls of the home. It's an evening like any other, and the fire is the heart of your existence. The fire has always been the heart of every home, the one thing that keeps you alive during the long, bitter winters and the harsh nights. There's a comforting crackle as the logs shift in the fire, their dry bark snapping with each new burst of flame. You are seated on the edge of the stone hearth, feeling the heat wrap around you like a blanket. The warmth penetrates deep into your bones, offering a reprieve from the cold that has seeped into the walls and floors. The fire is alive in a way that nothing else in the house is, dancing with its own rhythm, a force that's both gentle and fierce. It is the life-giving source in this harsh world. Around you, the room is dim, the light from the fire casting soft shadows on the walls. The flickering flames provide the only illumination, a humble reminder of the simplicity of life here. In a world without electricity, without the luxuries of modern convenience, the hearth is the center of everything. It's where the family gathers for warmth, for light, for food, and for companionship. It's where survival begins and ends. The fire crackles again, a long hiss as a small log splits in two. You feel the heat on your face, but you can't help but lean in closer. This fire, this small but mighty source of heat, is your protection against the bitter cold that grips the world outside. The wind howls against the windows, shaking the wooden shutters, but here by the hearth, there is peace. The rest of the house might be filled with the quiet sounds of creaking wood and the distant howls of wolves in the cold, but the hearth is where you find solace. The fire isn't just a source of warmth, though it's the heart of the home for other reasons. It is also the kitchen, the food that nourishes you, the meals that fill your belly and give you the strength to continue, are prepared right here in front of the fire. You watch as your mother or father stirs a pot of stew, the rich scent of boiling vegetables and meat rising from the iron cauldron. It's a meal made from what you've grown, what you've harvested, what you've worked for. The ingredients are simple, but they are enough. They are a gift from the earth, from the family's hard labor, from the bounty that you've worked so tirelessly to create. Every time a new meal is cooked over the fire, you feel the connection to the past. You know that this same routine, this same necessity, has been followed for generations. Families before you have gathered around the fire have felt the same heat on their skin, have shared stories while the fire crackled in the background. There is something deeply comforting in that connection, in knowing that this is the life that has sustained people for centuries. But while the hearth is central to life, it is also dangerous. The fire is an open flame, and even though it is vital to survival, it can also be deadly. You've heard the stories of others, of families who've lost everything because the fire wasn't tended properly. A log might fall out of place, or the wind might push the wrong way through a crack in the chimney, sending embers flying. The risk of fire is always present, lurking at the edge of your thoughts as you sit near the warmth. Every so often, your father or older sibling will tend to the fire, moving the logs carefully, ensuring that the flames stay contained. You can hear the scraping of the iron poker against the fire pit, the way they prod the logs to ensure they don't fall. Every move is deliberate, careful, with a quiet understanding of the power they wield. Fire is life here, but it is also chaos. It could take everything in an instant if left unchecked. And yet, despite the danger, the fire is a source of comfort. There's something about the flickering light, the soft warmth that it provides, that draws people in. In the evenings, after a long day of hard labor, you gather around the hearth with your family. The conversation flows easily as the fire crackles. Your mother tells stories from her childhood, tales of times when life was different, simpler, perhaps even harder. Your father shares what he's learned in the fields, lessons passed down from his own father. The younger children sit quietly by the fire, listening to the stories, learning the traditions that will carry on when they are older. The hearth becomes a stage for the passing of time, for the telling of stories, for the reinforcement of family bonds. You can feel the weight of history in these moments, the continuity of life in these small daily rituals. This is how people survive, not just through the physical act of working, of eating, of fighting against the cold, but through the stories, the shared experiences, the warmth of the fire, and the conversations that fill the night. As the evening wears on, the fire begins to dwindle, the flames dying down to glowing embers. The heat from the fire starts to fade, but you don't mind. The satisfaction of a day's work, the comfort of family, and the memories shared by the fire are enough to keep you warm inside. You watch as the last embers crackle and fade, leaving only the soft glow. And as the warmth from the hearth fades, the night begins to take over, bringing the world back to its cold, silent state. The hearth has been your refuge today, as it has been for generations before you. It has given you warmth, food, comfort, and the company of those you love. But tomorrow, the cycle will start again. The fire will need tending, the food will need cooking, and the stories will continue. The hearth will always be the center of this life, a symbol of survival and unity, of warmth and security, and of the never-ending struggle against the cold world outside. As you rise to tend to the hearth again, you realize that this fire, This small light in the dark is more than just a source of warmth. It is the embodiment of life itself, the fire that sustains, that protects, that holds together the fragile world you live in. And you will continue to care for it, as will those who come after you. For as long as people remain, the hearth will remain. The morning light filtered in through the small cracks in the wooden shutters, casting faint patterns across the room. You wake slowly, feeling the stiffness in your joints as you rise from the makeshift bed. The cold of the floor bites at your feet as you stand. The day is already beginning, and you know that survival requires every ounce of effort, every moment of attention. There's a ritual to the day, a set of tasks that must be done for life to continue. One of the most pressing tasks is food, what to eat, how to store it, and how to make it last. The luxury of refrigeration is unknown to you. The modern conveniences that many would take for granted, such as ice boxes or even cool cellars that can keep food fresh for days, do not exist here. Instead, food preservation is a constant battle, one that takes patience, skill, and time. You've learned that food is not just something to be prepared and eaten. It's something to be treasured, something to be fought for. Every scrap of it. The fire has already been rekindled in the hearth, crackling softly, casting a warm light in the otherwise cold, dim room. The familiar smell of wood smoke fills the air. You pull on your rough woolen tunic, the fabric scratching against your skin, and make your way over to the fire, where the pots and pans are already waiting. Today, like most days, you will prepare the simplest of meals. A pot of gruel, a hearty stew perhaps, and maybe, if luck is on your side, a small portion of salted meat or dried fish. The staples of life in this time. The absence of refrigeration means that everything has to be preserved. The food you eat today is a product of the long hours spent in preparation, the long days spent salting, drying, and smoking. Salt is precious here, as is smoke. It's your lifeline, the way to ensure that you have food when the seasons change, when the harvest fails, or when the hunt doesn't go well. Everything you eat has a story, how it was dried in the smokehouse, or how it was salted in the brine barrels. And you can feel a sense of pride in the work that went into that food. It wasn't simply handed to you. It was earned, made through toil and persistence. You walk to the table, where a wooden bowl of dried corn sits. You can see the marks of the sun on the yellow kernels, some slightly darker than others. This corn, this grain, is your staple. It's what you rely on through the seasons. But before it can be turned into a meal, there's work to be done. You pull the grinding stone closer to you, the heavy weight of it familiar in your hands. The grain must be ground by hand, a task that is both exhausting and time-consuming. The sound of the stones scraping against the rough surface of the mortar is a constant companion in your day. The first few minutes are slow, as you begin to break the corn down, turning the thick kernels into smaller pieces. Your arms ache from the repetitive motion, and the grinding seems to stretch on forever. But you push through. Each turn of the stone brings you closer to having something edible. It's a slow process, and it leaves your body sore and tired, but you know that the meal at the end will be worth it. Once the grain is ground into meal, the next step is cooking. You move to the hearth, where the iron pot is hanging over the fire. You'll mix the cornmeal with water, stirring constantly to avoid clumping, watching as the mixture thickens into a paste. The smell of the cornmeal cooking fills the room, earthy and warm, a smell that has become synonymous with sustenance. This meal won't be extravagant. It never is. It will be plain, simple, and filling, the kind of meal that allows you to keep going for another day. There's no room for luxury here, no time for extravagance. But the people here are resourceful. and they have learned how to make do, how to survive. As the cornmeal begins to thicken, you consider the food you've stored for the future. The smoking process is vital, and the smokehouse has become one of the most important parts of the homestead. You know that every time you hang a piece of meat in the smokehouse, you're doing more than just preserving it. You're ensuring that your family will have food during the harsh winter months when fresh supplies are hard to come by. The smokehouse itself is a simple structure made of wood and covered with a roof of thatch. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of wood smoke. There are racks for hanging meat, and you've spent many long hours tending the fire, ensuring that the meat is slowly smoked to perfection. The process is slow, and the result is worth the effort. The meat becomes tender and flavorful, infused with the smoke that hangs in the air. And then there's the drying. The drying racks are filled with slices of fish, salted and left out to dry in the sunday. The drying process is simple. You take the fresh fish, lay it out, and let the wind do the rest. The salt helps preserve it, but it's the air, the wind, and the sun that work together to create food that will last. But none of this comes easily. Every meal you prepare is a reminder of the struggle, the work, and the time it takes to survive. The grinding, the cooking, the drying, and the smoking, all of it takes hours, sometimes days. And yet, every bite is something you've earned through hard labor. Every meal is a victory, a testament to the resilience of those who live here. The absence of modern conveniences, of refrigerators and freezers, means that every meal, every ingredient, has a story. You don't just pick up a can of beans from the shelf. You grow the beans, you harvest them, and you store them. Every step of the process is connected to the land, to the seasons, and to the people around you. The meals you cook are the culmination of the labor of the entire household. And even though the food might be simple, it's made with the knowledge and effort of a community working together. After the meal is prepared, there is little time to sit back and relax. The work doesn't stop with eating. There's always more to be done. The crops need tending, the fire needs feeding, and the house needs repairs. But for now, you sit down to your meal, sharing it with your family, knowing that each bite, however humble, is a testament to your perseverance. Your ability to make do in a world that often seems harsh and unforgiving. As you take your first spoonful of the porridge, the warmth fills your belly. It's not gourmet food, but it's what you need to fuel yourself for another long day. It's simple, it's filling, and it's enough. For now, that's all that matters. But as you look around at the faces of those you love, you know that this is more than just survival. It's life, and that's something worth celebrating. As the first rays of the sun peek over the horizon, the biting cold greets you. It's winter in early colonial America, and warmth is a luxury that must be earned, fought for, and maintained with relentless effort. You shiver as you roll out of bed, the chill of the air cutting through the rough woolen blanket draped over you. The bed itself is little more than a wooden frame. The ropes underneath stretch tight and sagging in places. Topped with straw or corn husks, you stretch your stiff body, aching from the cold that has seeped into your bones throughout the night. There's no such thing as central heating, and the only source of warmth in this world is the fire you've worked so hard to keep alive. The first challenge of the day is to gather enough strength to rise and face the cold that permeates every corner of your tiny room. The lack of insulation is the first thing you notice when you step onto the floor. The ground is hard, cold-packed earth that, in the summer, is bearable, but in the winter, feels like ice beneath your bare feet. You can see your breath, forming a thin mist that vanishes into the morning air. There are no glass windows to shield you from the elements. just wooden shutters that close the outside world off, though not effectively enough to keep the cold at bay. You grab your coat, a heavy, scratchy woolen garment, patched and worn from countless seasons of use. It's not a coat that fits well or keeps out the wind as it should, but it's what you have. Layers of fabric, stacked one on top of the other, are the only defense against the relentless cold. The wool rubs against your skin, thick and coarse, uncomfortable against your back and arms. You button it up tightly, but it's no match for the cold that seeps into your bones. The fire is out. Of course, it's out. The embers that kept the house warm through the night have long since died down, leaving nothing but a cold hearth, and with it, the promise of a long, difficult morning. Without the fire, you're left vulnerable to the bite of winter's chill. The only option is to rebuild the fire, but that task is no small feat. You gather kindling dry twigs, bits of bark, and small logs enough to catch the flame and make it burn. But before you can build the fire, the wood needs to be chopped. You wrap your hands tightly around the cold handle of the axe, feeling the bite of the metal as it cuts into the rough wood. The axe is heavy in your hands, but you know that without the fire, survival would be impossible. It's a bitter, physical struggle, one you've grown accustomed to, but that doesn't make it any easier. Each swing of the axe sends a shock up your arms, the impact reverberating through your bones, and the thick, hard wood seems unyielding as you break it down into manageable pieces. The firewood will need to be chopped and split in this way for hours, and when the fire is finally kindled, it will take much more to keep it going. You need enough wood to get through the day, through the night, and into the next. The sun is high in the sky, but the cold persists, an ever-present companion that won't let you forget its power. Once you have enough wood piled up, you return to the hearth. The work of building the fire begins in earnest. You bend over the hearth, carefully placing the kindling, arranging it just so. You strike the flint and steel together, the spark catching against the dry kindling. The smoke rises, thin and curling, as the fire slowly begins to take shape. The crackling of the wood fills the silence of the house, offering a soft comfort as you watch the flames grow. But warmth doesn't come easily. It never does. The fire must be tended to constantly, watched over carefully, or it will die. You add logs to the fire, each piece of wood adding its warmth to the room, but it's never enough. The fire is never truly big enough to chase away the cold entirely, and the whole house is still damp from the night's chill. The walls seem to absorb the cold, and the air feels heavy, like it's pressing in on you, reminding you that the outside world is always just a few feet away. As the fire starts to roar, you feel the heat radiating outward, but the warmth is fleeting. The fire can't reach the far corners of the room where the cold persists. You sit near it, close enough to feel the heat, but not close enough to make it feel like the house is truly warm. It's the closest thing to comfort that you'll get today. Your clothes offer little protection against the elements. The wool itches as you move, its thick texture rubbing against your skin. Your fingers feel stiff and cold from chopping wood, and though the fire helps, you know that this warmth is temporary. It's a cruel reminder of just how much you depend on the fire to survive. Without it, everything would be much worse. The cold is always there, lurking, waiting for the moment when the fire dies down, and you're left at the mercy of the frost. And yet, in the midst of all this discomfort, you feel a sense of purpose. This is your life, your struggle. You've been fighting this battle against the cold, the hunger, and the exhaustion for as long as you can remember. Each morning brings its own set of challenges, but there's something deeply human about this struggle. You're alive, you're surviving, And for that, you find small moments of pride. When you're finally dressed in your layers of rough clothing, the fire crackling in front of you, you step back and let out a sigh of relief. It's not the kind of warmth that will make you forget the cold entirely, but it's enough to get you through the day. For now, that's all that matters. The rest of the day will be filled with more work, more chopping, more hauling, more tending to the fire. The struggle for warmth will continue, and there will be days when you feel like you can't go on. But you will. You always do. The fire will flicker and crackle, and you will keep adding logs to it, knowing that each piece of wood is one more step towards surviving another day in this harsh, unforgiving world. The warmth of the fire will keep you going, even when everything else seems impossible. In the early days of colonial America, life was a constant struggle against the elements, the land, and the hardships that came with carving out a life in a new, unforgiving world. But perhaps the greatest force that helped people survive was not just their own effort, it was the strength of community. In a time when resources were scarce, when danger lurked in the wilderness, and when every day was a fight for survival, no one person could do it all alone. The very fabric of life depended on the relationships between families, neighbors, and entire communities. You wake up to the sound of chickens clucking in the yard, the smell of wood smoke in the air, and the steady rhythm of the workday starting. You step outside, feeling the crunch of the frozen earth beneath your feet. The sun is still low in the sky, casting a golden light over the fields where the work is about to begin. You look around and see other families starting their day, everyone moving together, their lives intertwined in a web of shared labor and mutual aid. The community is more than just a group of people living in proximity. It's a lifeline. When the work of survival becomes too much to bear alone, it's the community that lifts you up, helping with what seems impossible. In colonial America, nothing happened without the help of others. Every harvest, every barn raising, every meal, it was all shared, all a product of collective effort. As you make your way to the fields, you see a group of neighbors gathering for a barn raising. The barn is an essential part of the farm, housing animals, storing feed, and protecting the harvest from the elements. Without it, a family's survival would be uncertain at best. But building a barn is no easy task. It's a monumental effort that requires many hands to lift heavy beams, hammer nails, and build the structure that will protect a family's livelihood. And so everyone comes together, the men and women, the young and the old, all contributing what they can. You see men working side by side, their muscles straining with the effort of lifting beams and hammering posts into the ground. The sweat glistens on their brows, but they keep going, driven by the shared goal. There's no hesitation, no reluctance, just a quiet determination. The women are not idle either. They gather food, prepare meals for everyone, and make sure that there's enough water to keep everyone going. The children, eager to be part of it all, run errands and help carry smaller items. But the barn raising is more than just a day of hard labor. It's a celebration in its own right. There's a joy in the shared effort, a sense of pride in knowing that every nail driven into the wood, every beam raised, is a symbol of the strength of the community. It's a reminder that, together, there is no task too great. When the barn is finally standing, sturdy and strong, there's a sense of accomplishment that ripples through the group. It's a victory not just for one family, but for everyone who had a hand in it. Later in the year, the harvest brings the community together again. The work of gathering crops is intense, and everyone must pitch in if the harvest is to be successful. There are long days spent in the fields, hands calloused from the constant motion of picking, pulling, and gathering. But it's not just the physical labor that makes the harvest so special, it's the camaraderie that forms as a result. You and your neighbors work side by side, gathering grain, picking fruit, and hauling in the vegetables that will feed everyone through the long winter months. As the day draws to a close, there's a feeling of satisfaction that hangs in the air. Everyone knows that, thanks to their hard work and collective effort, there will be food to eat, warmth to be had, and the promise of another season to come. The harvest is a time of both hard labor and joy, a time to reflect on the work that's been done and the bonds that have been formed. And it's not just the physical labor that keeps the community strong, it's the emotional support that flows through it as well. In times of sickness or loss, the community is there, offering comfort and help. You know that if something happens to you, your neighbors will be there to help with the work. If a family is struggling to feed their children, the community will step in and share what they have, no questions asked. If a fire burns down someone's house, you can count on the neighbors to help rebuild. There's no room for pride or shame when it comes to survival. Everyone's need is everyone's need, and the community is there to fill it. There are, of course, those moments of hardship, when you feel as though the weight of the world is on your shoulders. But even in those times, there's comfort in knowing that you're not alone. You know that no matter how hard things get, you have a whole community behind you, ready to help however they can. It's a safety net, not just in the physical sense, but in the emotional sense as well. The people you live alongside are your family, your support system, your strength. But it's not just in times of need that the community shines. There are moments of joy, too. The communal events, like the barn raising or the harvest celebrations, are as much about the laughter and the stories shared as they are about the work that's done. When the day's labor is complete and everyone gathers around the fire, there's a sense of peace that settles over the group. The work is done, the food is shared, and for a brief moment, there's nothing left to do but enjoy each other's company. You think about how, in a world so harsh and unforgiving, it's the strength of these bonds that make life worth living. The community, with its collective effort and unwavering support, is the bedrock on which everything is built. It's what keeps you going, even when things seem impossible. The relationships formed within this tight-knit community are the thread that holds everything together. Without them, survival would be a much more difficult and likely impossible endeavor. It's the unspoken understanding that you're all in this together, that no one is left to fend for themselves, that makes this world bearable. Everyone has their role to play, and each role is equally important, whether it's tending the fields, cooking meals, raising children, or simply offering a helping hand. Everyone's contribution is vital to the survival of the whole. In the harshness of colonial life, it's the community that makes all the difference. The shared struggles, the shared joys, and the shared labor create a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, and a deep, abiding connection to one another. It's a bond that transcends hardship, that holds fast even in the darkest moments, and that ensures that, no matter what, the community will always survive together. In the early days of colonial America, leisure was a concept far removed from the realities of everyday life. The moment the sun began to rise, so did the people, families, neighbors, and even children ready to work long hours, performing tasks that ensured their survival. The work was never ending, and the reward was simply staying alive, a luxury many in this fledgling society could not afford to take for granted. You wake up early in the morning, the first light filtering through the small cracks in the wooden shutters. The cold from the dirt floor seeps into your body as your feet hit the ground. The house is dim, with only the faint glow of dawn peeking through the oiled paper windows. You can hear the creak of floorboards as your family stirs. In a household like this, there is no such thing as privacy. Everyone is awake, and everyone is already thinking about the day's work. You slip into your rough woolen clothes, the same ones you wore yesterday and the day before. For few families in colonial America had more than one or two sets of everyday clothing. The clothes are scratchy and stiff, but they're made to last. Every stitch is thick and uneven, designed to withstand the wear and tear of daily labor. There's no time to think about comfort, not when survival is the only thing that matters. As you step outside to fetch water from the well, you feel the chill of the morning air bite into your skin. The task of carrying water isn't just about convenience, it's a necessity. Without water, there's no cooking, no cleaning, no drinking. You're constantly aware of how much you use and how far you have to walk to get more. Every chore is like this: essential, demanding, and relentless. There is no room for laziness, not when so much depends on the sweat of your brow and the strength of your body. Your mother is already at the hearth, preparing the morning meal. The fire is barely aglow, and she must coax it back to life, feeding it kindling and small twigs to get the flames back up. She's been up for hours, but her work is far from over. The large iron pot hanging over the fire requires constant attention, stirring the porridge, adjusting the heat, and making sure that the food doesn't burn. You watch as she moves with practiced efficiency, knowing that every meal must be prepared from scratch, using what little they've managed to preserve from the harvest. There are no shortcuts here, no convenience foods. Every meal is an act of survival, and each step of the process is vital. But the work doesn't stop there. Your younger siblings are already outside, feeding the animals, chickens, pigs, maybe a cow if you're lucky. The work is hard, but there's no escaping it. Even the youngest children are expected to contribute to the family's needs. You watch as your younger brother, not more than 5 years old, struggles to carry the basket of eggs he's just gathered. It's heavy for him, but he knows the importance of the task. In this world, there's no such thing as idleness. From the moment you wake up, you're part of a system that demands constant effort. When the animals are fed, the chores shift. The fields need to be tended, the firewood chopped, the food preserved for the coming months. Even children like you are tasked with small jobs. You pick up a basket, head out to gather herbs for dinner, or maybe gather firewood to keep the fire going. Every chore, no matter how small, is part of a greater effort, and everyone in the household plays their part. The work feels never-ending. As the sun rises higher in the sky, your body begins to ache from the constant motion. The hours are long, and though you are young, you can already feel the toll it takes on your body. Your hands, once soft, are now calloused from carrying, chopping, and planting. Your back aches from bending over the garden or hauling heavy buckets of water. There's no such thing as a break. The rhythm of the day is defined by the tasks at hand, and the work doesn't stop until the sun goes down. Even when the workday finally ends, there's no true rest. Dinner is a communal affair, and though everyone is exhausted, the time spent together around the table is sacred. But even during this time, there's no time for relaxation. Conversation is functional, talking of the next day's work or discussing what needs to be done. The family is close, but even in this closeness, there's a sense of duty that lingers in the air, an unspoken agreement that no one is allowed to rest while there's still work to be done. The evening hours bring a slight reprieve, but they are not without their own demands. You might sit by the fire, your body sore and your mind tired from the day's exertions. But even then, there are small tasks that need to be done: mending clothes, preparing the next day's provisions, or perhaps sewing a piece of cloth that's been torn. The light from the fire casts flickering shadows around the room as you sit together, the quiet hum of life carrying on in the background. But despite the exhaustion, there is a sense of pride in this hard work. The community around you, your family, your neighbors, are all bound by the same rhythm, the same need for survival. You've worked together to make it through another day, and that in itself is a victory. The days may be long, the tasks may be endless, but there's a sense of shared purpose that binds everyone together. Leisure is a foreign concept in this world. The notion of spending time simply for enjoyment feels distant, something from another world. There is no time for relaxation, no time to be idle, but even in the absence of leisure, there is a quiet satisfaction in knowing that every moment of the day has meaning. Every task has a purpose, and that survival itself is a victory. In this world, hard work is the currency of life. It's what keeps people fed, clothed, and sheltered. It's what binds families together, and it's what ensures the survival of the community. There is no room for laziness, no room for idleness. Every action, no matter how small, contributes to the greater whole. And though it is exhausting, it's also incredibly fulfilling. The work might be hard, but it's the foundation on which life is built. As the day winds down and you lie down in your simple bed, you can't help but reflect on the work that's been done. You are tired, your body sore, but you know that another day will come, and with it, more work. But with that work, there's also survival, community, and the quiet understanding that everything you've done has brought you one step closer to another day, another harvest, another season of life. And that, in itself, is a kind of reward. In the world of early colonial America, health was a fragile thing, something that could be easily lost with a single misstep, a simple illness, or an unexpected injury. You wake up one morning feeling fine, but by the end of the day, you may find yourself battling a fever, a sore throat, or a wound that refuses to heal. Unlike modern times, there was no guarantee that even the simplest ailment could be treated effectively, and the lack of medical knowledge or access to healthcare meant that survival often depended on the resilience of the body and the wisdom passed down through generations. The first thing you notice is how little you know about the human body. The idea that diseases are caused by invisible germs hasn't been discovered yet. Instead, people believe in imbalances of the humor's blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, believing that illness is a result of these bodily fluids being out of sync. There's no understanding of infections, and no antibiotics to stop them. If you get sick, the best you can hope for is that your body's own strength will carry you through. When someone falls ill in the colony, their family is their first line of defense. There are no hospitals, no doctors to call, only local healers and folk remedies. A fever, for example, might be treated with willow bark tea, an ancient remedy used to relieve pain, even though its true properties won't be understood for centuries. It's hard to say whether it will work. If it does, the fever might subside, or the person might just be lucky. If it doesn't, the family can only hope for the best. Infections are a different story entirely. A simple scratch can become infected, and with no way to sterilize the wound, it may fester and worsen. There are no antibiotics to stop the spread of bacteria. Infected wounds often lead to blood poisoning, a slow and painful death that might take days or weeks. People pray for the body's natural ability to fight it off, but sometimes it's simply not enough. You hear about the children in the colony, the ones who are most vulnerable. Many families lose half their children before they reach adulthood. It's not uncommon for families to wait several months before even naming their newborns, knowing the chances of survival are so slim. Diseases like dysentery, smallpox, and measles spread like wildfire through tight-knit communities, with no way to stop them. Without vaccines or the ability to even recognize germs, these diseases often become death sentences. Children who fall ill often have to suffer through the pain with little comfort, and many die in their infancy or early childhood. A heartbreaking fact for the parents who have no choice but to watch. The lack of proper sanitation only adds to the struggle. Clean water is hard to come by, and many families drink from wells that are contaminated with human waste. Without a basic understanding of hygiene, these conditions foster the spread of illness. When a child gets sick, it's not just the immediate family who suffers often. The entire household is impacted. The illness can spread from one person to the next, making a bad situation worse. When someone is injured, the best they can hope for is the skill of the local blacksmith or healer. There are no hospitals to go to, no surgeons trained to fix broken bones or treat deep cuts. If you break a leg, you may have it splinted, but you'll be left to heal on your own. If the bone doesn't set properly, or if infection sets in, there's little hope. The idea of sterilization, of keeping wounds clean, is an unknown concept, and it's often the small injuries, those that we would now think nothing of, that turn fatal. You see, families suffer from these realities. The older children learn to care for the younger ones when they get sick, using whatever herbs and remedies they know. Perhaps a mother will bathe her child's head with chamomile, or they'll apply a poultice made of mustard seed to ease aches and pains. These remedies, passed down from generation to generation, are often their best chance of survival. But the effectiveness of these remedies is a matter of luck, and there's no guarantee that they will work. In the worst cases, if an illness or injury becomes too severe, the person might just be left to rest and wait for death. The family watches, powerless to stop what is happening. Life in these colonies is fragile. The simple acts of living, eating, working, staying warm are so consuming that there's little room left for preventative health care. The very act of surviving the elements, the labor, the scarcity, is enough to take all the energy and focus of a person. And when illness or injury strikes, there is little that can be done beyond offering comfort and hoping for the best. It's easy to look at this from a modern perspective and think about how different it all was, how primitive, how hard. But the people of colonial America didn't know any better. This was their world. The idea of medical knowledge being in the hands of trained doctors, of surgeries happening with clean tools and sterile environments, wasn't even a dream yet. The people who lived through these times didn't have a choice. They had to rely on themselves, on their families, on their neighbors, and on their faith. If something went wrong, all they could do was pray for strength, pray for a recovery, and, in some cases, simply pray for death to come quickly. Despite the many challenges, there is something about the way these people lived that is remarkable. They didn't have the medical advancements that we take for granted today, but they had a determination, a resilience, and a community that made survival possible. They didn't give up when they were sick or injured. They kept fighting, kept living, kept working, and kept hoping. This sense of perseverance, of pushing forward despite the odds, is something that resonates through the ages. In the end, the most remarkable thing about life in colonial America was not the hardships, the illness, or the scarcity. It was the way the people adapted. They learned to live with the reality of their situation, accepting their limits and working within them. They made do with what they had, and when they faced the worst, they leaned on each other for support. They shared resources, offered comfort, and came together to face the trials of their world. In the silence of a family huddled around a sick child, or in the tired faces of parents who have lost yet another infant, you can see the quiet strength of a people who understood that survival was a daily fight. There were no guarantees, just hope, hard work, and the unspoken bond of community. And yet, somehow, Despite the absence of modern medicine, despite the many dangers, they lived, they thrived, they made it through. And that is what defines the spirit of colonial America, the courage to keep moving forward, even when it seemed impossible. In the early days of colonial America, life was a delicate balance between survival and hardship. The world was unforgiving, and the most essential, natural part of life, birth, was fraught with danger. You are living in a time when childbirth is perilous, and the very survival of the newborn is uncertain, especially when the medical knowledge and tools we take for granted today were either rudimentary or non-existent. The room is dimly lit, with the flickering of a single candle casting shadows on the walls of a humble, makeshift home. It's a quiet night, but the stillness is pierced by the sound of women whispering anxiously, murmuring prayers, and preparing for what they know is a ritual of survival childbirth. There's no doctor to oversee the birth, no sterile conditions to speak of, just midwives, women who have learned from years of experience, passed down knowledge and hope. As you watch, you see how different things are from what you know. The midwives, skilled but weary from years of service, prepare the space, setting out the few tools they have: a sharp pair of scissors, perhaps a knife to cut the umbilical cord, and some clean cloths to wrap the baby. These women know what they're doing, but even they are aware of the risks. There's little they can do if things go wrong: no antibiotics to prevent infection, no modern instruments to monitor the baby's heartbeat, no way to control complications that may arise during the birth. Every birth is a gamble. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, the pungent scent of the fire that burns low in the hearth, and the musty earthiness of the room itself. It's a smell you're becoming used to, though it's far from the comfort of the homes you're used to in the modern day. This is a house that feels alive with history, with generations of life and death playing out in its small confines. The women gather around the woman in labor, their faces lined with the wisdom of countless births, their hands steady but their hearts anxious. As the mother groans in pain, you realize how close to the edge she's walking. The very act of giving life is a dangerous one. You know that, statistically, many women don't make it through the process, and some who do face months of recovery from infections that modern medicine would quickly prevent. But here, in the absence of antiseptics or sterilized conditions, the birth will unfold as it has for centuries, hoping the mother's strength and the midwife's experience are enough to guide the child into the world safely. You can hear the muffled cries of children in the background, playing, or perhaps working, depending on their age. There's no time for them to sit idle in colonial America. Life demands participation from every member of the family, no matter their age. Children, as young as 5 or 6, are expected to work, whether it's tending the animals, gathering firewood, or helping in the kitchen. The idea of a childhood spent in carefree play is a luxury few can afford. Even so, there's a sense of solidarity among the family members, an unspoken bond that ties them together in the face of the daily grind. But this moment, the birth of a new child, brings with it not just hope, but also fear. Fear that the baby might not survive the difficult conditions of birth. Infant mortality rates are high in colonial America, and no one dares to get too attached to the baby until it takes its first breath and proves that it will live. The statistics are brutal. Many babies don't make it past their first year. Illnesses, malnutrition, and the ever-present threat of disease claim the lives of countless children. If the baby does survive the birth, the emotional toll doesn't end there. Even in the best of circumstances, caring for a newborn is a grueling and exhausting task. The mother, already weary from the labor, will have little time to recover before she is up and tending to the needs of her family. With no easy access to medical care, the baby will often be left to the care of the mother, who must do her best with what little she has. As a result, the burden of childbirth doesn't just weigh on the mother, but on the entire family. Everyone's daily life is impacted by the arrival of a new child, from the extra food required to sustain the family to the extra labor required to care for the baby. In the days and weeks after the birth, you can sense the exhaustion that takes hold of the new mother. There's no maternity leave, no support systems beyond her immediate family, and even if the birth is successful, she must keep working, keep pushing through the physical pain, keep surviving. If the baby is lucky enough to live, it will become a part of the ongoing cycle of labor. And if the baby doesn't make it, the grief of losing a child can be overwhelming. But life must continue. This cycle of birth, survival, and loss defines family life in early America. There are no luxuries here, no doctors, no clean hospitals, no modern amenities to ease the suffering. The simple act of bringing a child into the world is a monumental struggle, one that often leaves deep emotional and physical scars on the mother and the family as a whole. But even in the face of this, there is a quiet resilience, an unspoken understanding that survival is a shared responsibility. In colonial America, family life was not something to be taken for granted. Every day was a struggle to keep the family together, to keep everyone fed, clothed, and alive. But through it all, there was a sense of unity and determination. The emotional toll of losing a child, of facing the difficulties of childbirth, was tempered by the strength and resilience of the community. Families leaned on each other, supported each other, and found strength in their shared hardship. And, for some, the arrival of a new life, though fraught with danger, was a hopeful reminder that life, in all its fragile beauty, continues on. The birth of a child in colonial America was more than just a physical event. It was a symbol of the hope, resilience, and determination that defined the early settlers of this land. A birth was a reminder that, despite the hardships, life went on stronger, more resilient, and more enduring than the challenges they faced. And in the end, that was the true spirit of survival. Pushing forward, no matter the odds, no matter the suffering, and finding joy in the small, fleeting moments of life that they could share together. In colonial America, the concept of social class was not just an abstract idea, it was a defining feature of daily life. The divide between the wealthy and the poor was vast, and it shaped everything from the quality of housing to the food on your plate, and even the very air you breathed. The class you were born into dictated the opportunities available to you, and that divide was something you couldn't escape. As you wake up in this world, you realize that the luxury of choice, the ability to change your destiny, is something reserved for only a select few. As you rise from your meager bed, you feel the roughness of the wool blanket beneath you, the thin mattress hardly cushioning your bones. The room is dimly lit by a single candle that sputters, casting shadows that make the space feel smaller, even more cramped. The air is cold, and you can feel the dampness creeping through the walls, seeping into your bones. The scent of wood smoke is ever present, filling the room with a smoky haze that lingers long after the fire has died down. Your stomach growls, a constant reminder of the hard work ahead and the meager meal that awaits you. But then, you think about the houses of the wealthy, those fortunate enough to have a different experience, a different world. Their homes are grand, designed for comfort rather than survival. You can imagine the spacious rooms, their fine furniture arranged carefully around roaring fireplaces, the warmth that would fill every corner of the house. They would have soft beds, feather-stuffed pillows, and thick carpets to muffle the sound of footsteps. Their food would be plentiful, fresh, and flavored with spices, things you only dream of tasting. And yet, even as you imagine this, you know that for them, life still isn't without its struggles. The difference lies in the scale, the luxury, the ease, the opportunity to thrive without constant worry. But for now, your reality is not theirs. Your world is a world of survival, of working with your hands to create enough to eat, of waking up in the cold, in a room that has no glass to keep out the wind. You head outside to begin the day's work, your feet hitting the frozen ground. It's early, the sun still struggling to rise, but already the air is filled with sounds, children's voices calling to one another, the rustle of animals in their pens, and the occasional creak of wooden planks underfoot as families begin to stir. You walk through your small cabin, your home, and out into the yard. The structures around you are humble, built of rough-hewn logs, designed to shelter from the elements and house what little the family owns. You're not alone, of course. Nearby, a small group of families live similarly, each one struggling to get by, just like you. Together, you share the daily burdens of colonial life. From plowing the fields to gathering firewood, from tending the livestock to repairing the roofs that threaten to leak in the next rainstorm, everyone is in it together, working toward the same goal: survival. And yet, there are sharp distinctions between the homes you share with others and the grand estates of the rich. From where you stand, you can see it, a large, imposing house in the distance, the home of one of the wealthiest landowners in the area. You can imagine the grandeur inside, servants moving silently in and out of rooms, their lives devoted to the comfort of their masters, fine food being prepared by cooks in a large, well-stocked kitchen, a garden full of flowers and fruits not grown by the labor of the hands of the family, but harvested by those who work for them. You imagine the wealth that flows through their fingers, the lavish comforts that surround them daily. But you know the truth too, the truth that the wealthy cannot live without the labor of others. The wealth that surrounds them, the warmth of their homes, the softness of their beds, and the abundance of their meals are all built upon the backs of people like you. The wealthy may live in comfort, but it is the hard labor of those beneath them that makes their lives possible. For every piece of fine furniture that graces their parlors, there are men and women working tirelessly to make it, to deliver it, to maintain it. In the grand house of the wealthy, the landowner does not work the land himself. Instead, it is the indentured servants and slaves who tend to the crops, who labor in the fields, who serve in the kitchens and keep the fires burning. You have seen them, sometimes, when you pass by the estate, dark-skinned men and women, some of them born into servitude, others bound by contracts that hold them to their servitude for years at a time. They work tirelessly for their masters, under the harsh eyes of overseers, driven by the constant fear of punishment. They live in quarters separated from the main house, often cramped, poorly built, and barely adequate to house their families. It's a system that allows the wealthy to live in opulence while others toil in the shadows. The divide between the classes is stark. While you wake up to a cold, dimly lit room, perhaps with a few bits of stale bread to eat for the day, the wealthy wake to a hot breakfast served in porcelain bowls with freshly baked bread and butter. Their clothes are finely tailored, made of soft fabrics that you can't imagine ever wearing. You, on the other hand, are lucky to have one set of clothes to wear for the season, and that, too, is worn thin from the constant need for patching and mending. Even the slaves and servants who work in the houses of the wealthy are separated by their race, class, and status. Their lives are dedicated to the service of others, and though they are an essential part of the wealth that others enjoy, they receive little for their labor. They live in conditions far worse than the families they serve, isolated and often subjected to harsh punishment for the slightest infraction. Their lives are a constant reminder that wealth, in this society, is not something that is earned but inherited. And it's the labor of people like you, the poor, the working class, that makes the very foundations of their wealth possible. The landlord's power is absolute. The rules are simple but harsh. Work hard, stay obedient, and remain invisible. If you step out of line, there's no forgiveness. You've seen the consequences for those who falter their belongings, tossed out into the cold, their names forever marked as troublemakers. In this world, survival is a fragile thing, but for the wealthy, it is ensured through the oppression of those beneath them. But still, you carry on. You do the work, because you have no choice. You must, and so you do, knowing that each day brings with it a struggle that feels insurmountable at times. And yet, there is something in the struggle itself that defines you. There's a quiet dignity in the labor, a sense that, despite the inequalities, you are part of something larger than yourself, a web of lives that are interconnected, bound together by the hard work and sacrifice that make survival possible. As you finish your work for the day, and the sun dips below the horizon, the wealthy will return to their grand homes, their soft beds, and their fine dinners. You too will return to your small cabin. The work may be endless, but at least you can rest, knowing that tomorrow will come, and with it, the chance to survive another day in a world that doesn't always seem to care about your struggle. And yet, despite it all, you endure. For in this life, survival is the ultimate goal, and you will fight to live another day, even as the inequalities and injustices persist. You will carry on, as you always have, because it's the only choice you have. In the early days of colonial America, faith and religion were not merely a part of life, they were the very foundation upon which everything else rested. As the sun began to rise, casting a dim light over the cold earth, you knew that today would follow the same rhythm as every other day. Work, survival, and, of course, the heavy burden of faith that guided every step. Religion, here in this fledgling society, wasn't just something you practiced when it was convenient. It was a duty, a way of life that was woven into the fabric of every action, every decision, and every conversation. The call to prayer was more than just a suggestion, it was an expectation. To miss church on Sunday, or even to shirk religious duties during the week, was to invite judgment not only from the community but from God Himself. As you wake up and feel the familiar chill of the early morning air, the weight of your reality sets in. You are not just part of a struggling community, fighting against the elements for survival, you are also part of a larger spiritual order. This too is a kind of survival, a survival of the soul, of the very spirit of the colony itself. Today, like every Sunday, you will gather with your neighbors in the village church. The service will be long, longer than anyone in modern times could possibly endure. But you will sit, stand, kneel, and pray, all for the sake of salvation. The physical discomforts you experience during the service will be nothing compared to the trials your soul may face without the comfort of divine intervention. The church itself is a modest structure, built of wood and stone, but it is the heart of the community. It stands as a place of refuge, but also as a reminder of the expectations of those around you. The walls, sturdy but simple, enclose you and your fellow colonists, all dressed in their plain, worn clothing. The air smells faintly of wood, candle smoke, and the earthy, almost musty scent of the crowd gathered inside. It's cold, and your body aches from the long hours of work. But you stand alongside your fellow colonists, some with weary faces, others with a quiet determination in their eyes. The priest enters the pulpit, his voice firm, and the congregation falls silent. The service begins with a hymn, the organ or a lone musician playing in the background as everyone sings with a sense of reverence that echoes through the small building. The hymns are simple but rich with meaning, and the words wash over you, filling the space between the physical discomfort of your body and the emotional solace your soul craves. You are not alone. You are connected to something greater than yourself, greater than your struggle to survive in this harsh world. In that moment, the song fills the gaps left by hunger, by cold, and by exhaustion. For the next several hours, the service drags on. The preacher speaks, his words filled with fire and conviction, each sentence heavier than the one before. The sermon is long, full of warnings, admonitions, and reminders of the suffering in this life that leads to salvation in the next. The message is clear. Life is hard, but that's God's plan. Suffering is not to be feared, for it is the test of your faith. And only through enduring hardship can you truly find your place in the kingdom of heaven. The thought of suffering and sacrifice is omnipresent, but so is the promise of eternal peace. As the preacher speaks, you listen intently, even if the words are hard to hear. Some of the older folks nod in agreement, their faces etched with years of struggle. They know this truth all too well. Their weathered hands, worn from years of physical labor, clasp tightly in front of them as they take in every word. They've seen the death of children, the collapse of farms, the struggles of their neighbors. They have buried family members, watched their crops wither in the heat, and lived through seasons of hunger. But their faith has not wavered, and perhaps, in this very moment, you feel your own faith strengthen as you look around at the faces of your fellow colonists. The pain is shared, the endurance is shared, and together you will all endure, no matter how long the struggle lasts. The sermon continues, and the preacher speaks of salvation in terms of communal strength. He reminds you that all the suffering, all the sacrifice, is not just for individual salvation, but for the greater good of the colony. It is through collective faith and collective labor that this new world will survive. This is not just a physical world, it is a spiritual one too. And your place in it is defined by the strength of your faith and your willingness to work for the common good. When the service finally concludes, the congregation stands and sings one last hymn. You are tired, your back aches from the long hours of kneeling and standing, but as you sing, you feel a quiet sense of peace. There is something comforting in knowing that while the world outside may be cold and uncertain, inside these walls you are part of something larger, something enduring. You step out into the cold light of day, the wind biting at your face, and take a deep breath. The coldness feels almost cleansing, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the church that has been filling you with its sense of purpose. But there is work to be done, and the service, however long, has not freed you from the burdens of daily life. The farm work, the care of the animals, the cooking, the building, the fixing, all of that remains. Yet you carry the words of the preacher with you. Suffering is inevitable, but it is also the path to righteousness. You know that with each shovel of dirt, each cut of wood, each piece of clothing sewn, you are fulfilling a greater purpose. It is hard, but it is worth it. Your family, your community, and your faith share the long hours of work. And as the day wears on, with the cold settling into your bones once again, you find solace in the thought that this hardship is not meaningless. Each day is another test, another chance to prove your worth to God. And as the sun begins to set, you return to your small cabin, your thoughts still lingering on the lessons of the service. You've done your part, and you know that tomorrow you will rise again to do the same, until the cycle of life and faith continues. The fire burns low in the hearth, and you settle into a restless sleep, knowing that in the morning, the same battle for survival and the same devotion to your faith will begin again. And so, it goes an unbroken rhythm of survival, sacrifice, and faith. In the harsh world of colonial America, these elements are inseparable. The struggle to survive is not just physical, it is spiritual. Every act of survival, from tending the fields to caring for the sick, is a testament to the faith that sustains you and your community. And it is through this faith, tested and strengthened by every hardship, that you find your place in this new world. In the vast expanses of rural colonial America, life was not just about survival, it was about isolation. You wake up to a world that stretches endlessly in every direction. The house is small, the hearth dimly flickering, and the only sounds are the crackle of the fire and the distant calls of animals. There's a stillness here that presses down on you, a weight that exists not just in the air, but in the very silence of the land. You can feel the absence of neighbors, the absence of the bustle that you might hear in town or even in the smaller farms nearby. Out here, in this remote place, you and your family are truly alone. The first sign of isolation hits you even before you get out of bed. The window is barely a thin slit, letting in only enough light to let you know it's morning. Through it, you see nothing but the bare landscape fields dotted with tree stumps, rocky hills, and the relentless earth stretching into the distance. The nearest neighbor is miles away, and that might as well be 100 miles when you think about the time it would take to walk there on foot. The distance isn't just physical, it's a psychological distance too. It's a reminder that in this life, you are largely self-reliant. Stepping out of bed, the cold earth beneath your feet sends a sharp jolt up your spine. Your body reacts immediately, your muscles stiff, your skin prickled by the unrelenting cold that creeps into every crack and crevice of the cabin. There's no central heating, no running water, and certainly no luxuries like electricity or plumbing. The simple act of moving through your home feels like a battle against the elements, as if nature itself is trying to reclaim what's hers. But you're used to it now. You've learned how to endure. You start your day, and already the work is pressing down on you. There's no such thing as taking a day off here. Even the simplest tasks require physical effort, fetching water from a nearby well, stoking the fire, checking the animals, or tending to the crops. But it's not just about keeping busy, it's about survival. Every action you take is done with the knowledge that there is no one to help you if something goes wrong. There are no neighbors to lean on in times of need, no shop down the street for when your tools break. If you don't get the work done, if you fail to tend to your animals or repair your roof when the wind howls through the night, then the consequences are yours alone to bear. The isolation weighs heavily on the mind. You can feel it in the way the days seem to stretch on forever, one indistinguishable from the other. There's no end to the work, no light at the end of the tunnel. And though you may find solace in the company of your family, the loneliness of the land seeps into your bones. You're trapped in a cycle of daily chores that never end, never let up. The days are long, and the nights are longer, filled with the constant hum of wind against the cabin walls, the creak of wood, and the low rustle of leaves. The outside world feels far, far away, a place you can only glimpse in your memories, never truly reach. There are no markets to visit here. The nearest town is days away, and even then, it's nothing like the cities of Europe or even the more settled areas of the colonies. It's a place where goods are traded, but there's little luxury to be found. For most, the town serves as a place to gather essentials, tools, grain, cloth, everything necessary to keep the household going. But if you run out of something, if a crop fails, or if you need medical attention, there's little hope for quick help. You must make do with what you have. You rely on your skills and the resources available to you. You have to be resourceful, always learning, always adapting to survive. That's what rural life teaches you. Resilience. Every day is a lesson in making do. When the firewood starts running low, you venture into the forest, hacking at trees with your axe until your muscles burn and your breath fogs in the cold. The land doesn't offer much, but it offers enough for those who know how to extract it. You've learned to grow your own food, harvest what's needed, and preserve it for the long months of winter. But even in the best of times, it's never enough. The risk of famine is ever present, and a single bad season can mean a hard winter ahead. The animals you keep are essential to your survival. Pigs, chickens, maybe a cow. They're not pets. They're walking sources of food, of milk, of leather. But they too require constant attention. Every day is spent cleaning, feeding, mending fences, and keeping predators at bay. In the evening, when the chores are done, there's no respite. The day's work has simply brought you to the brink of survival. Now you have to start over again tomorrow. And then there's the loneliness. There are no neighbors to visit, no markets to peruse, no distractions from the silence of the land. The lack of human contact is perhaps the hardest part of rural life. While there's work to be done, your mind wanders to the family you left behind, to the friends you once had. But here, you are a solitary figure, much like the land itself. There's no time to dwell on the isolation, of course. The work never stops. But in those fleeting moments when the sun sets and the fire burns low, you can't help but feel the weight of it all, the endless stretch of empty land and the absence of human connection. In the rare moments when you do see someone from the neighboring farm, you exchange quick pleasantries, but there is no real connection. Everyone is busy. Everyone is struggling to survive. The social fabric here is thin, stitched together by necessity rather than true camaraderie. Everyone is focused on their own survival, too wrapped up in the demands of daily life to offer much more than a nod. But that's all you really need in this world, isn't it? The knowledge that you're not alone, even if you never speak a word. The bond is there, unspoken but understood. The isolation of rural life in colonial America is a trial, but it is also a crucible. The challenges you face shape who you are, stronger, more resilient, and more capable of surviving the worst life can throw at you. But it comes at a price. You give up the comforts of society, the ease of modern connections, and in return, you gain something far harder to define: the ability to survive, to stand alone against the vast, uncaring land, and to rely on nothing but your own hands and mind to get by. As you finish your chores for the day and settle down beside the hearth, you reflect on the solitude of it all. This is your life, and it is both a challenge and a privilege. It is the life of those who came before you and those who will come after you, living in the endless cycle of survival, resilience, and quiet determination. You are part of a long tradition of people who have fought not just for food and warmth, but for the very right to exist in a world that offers little mercy. And as the fire crackles and the cold wind howls outside, you know that this life, though lonely, is also rich with purpose. As the days pass, the cycle of seasons becomes more than just a rhythm to life. It is life itself. You wake up in a world shaped by the changing seasons, each one bringing its own challenges, its own work, and its own rewards. The seasons are like the beat of a drum, dictating the pace of your existence. Each one requires something different from you, and each one tests you in its own way. The summer heat demands that you toil under the sun, while the winter cold tests your endurance. But no matter the season, You know that survival means working with the land, not against it. Spring comes slowly at first, barely a whisper against the long, hard winter that seems to stretch on forever. But one day, you wake up and there's something different in the air. The chill isn't as sharp. The ground, once frozen solid, begins to soften, revealing the first signs of life, a patch of green here, a bud there. It's the promise of renewal, the moment when the earth awakens after months of dormancy. Spring is a time for planting. The land calls to you, and you answer with the energy that only the coming of a new season can bring. You grab the tools, worn from years of use but still sturdy enough to do the work. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth as you work the soil. The process is slow and deliberate. First, you clear away the remnants of last season's crops, pulling weeds from the earth, turning the soil over with the plow, and adding the compost you've kept through the winter to enrich the soil. The rhythm of the work becomes familiar. Bend, dig, plant, and repeat. You can feel the earth under your hands, and with each seed you plant, you know you are part of something much bigger than yourself. But spring also brings with it the relentless worry that nothing is certain. Every day, you pray the weather will hold. A late frost can destroy the young plants before they have a chance to grow. A heavy rain can wash away the seeds before they take root. You keep working, knowing that in this life, hope and fear are often the same. The family works together in the fields, each person contributing their share. The children are old enough now to help with smaller tasks, planting seeds, watering the young crops, and keeping the animals in check. Even the smallest child has a role. Every hand is needed, and the sense of unity in the family is palpable. In the evenings, you gather around the fire, exhausted but content, knowing that the first step has been taken toward another year of survival. Summer is both a blessing and a curse. The days stretch long and hot, the sun relentless as it climbs high into the sky. The work is endless, and the heat makes every task more difficult. You wake before the sun rises, already anticipating the long day ahead. The first thing you notice when you step outside is the heat. It hits you like a wall, and for a moment, it takes your breath away. The land, now fully awake, is teeming with life-buzzing insects, birds flitting from tree to tree, and the faint hum of distant farm work. You and your family spend long hours in the fields. The crops you planted in the spring now require constant care. Weeding is the most demanding task. You bend over in the hot sun, pulling weeds by hand, and every minute feels like a small eternity. You wipe sweat from your brow, but it's useless. The sun beats down on you, and the earth seems to absorb every ounce of energy you have. But you don't stop. The work is never done. As the days heat up, there are other tasks to attend to: tending to the animals, repairing fences, keeping the well stocked with water, and gathering firewood for the winter ahead. It's easy to forget that even in the height of summer, the future looms over you. Winter always seems far away, but you know that it's just a few months away. The smell of fresh hay and the sound of animals grazing serve as a reminder that this is a time to prepare not just for today, but for what's to come. Despite the challenges, summer has its rewards. The fruits of your labor begin to show. Tomatoes ripen, beans twist around their vines, and corn shoots high into the air, ready to be harvested. The land, once barren and cold, now hums with life. But even as you reap the fruits of your work, there's always the fear of an unexpected storm. A bad drought, a late frost, or a sudden downpour could ruin the harvest you've worked so hard for. In this life, nothing is guaranteed, but you carry on, working together as a family, because what else can you do? Fall is the time for gathering. The trees begin to show their colors, brilliant reds, golds, and oranges, As the world shifts toward the cooler months, the days begin to shorten, and the air grows crisp with the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke. You can feel the change in the air. It's no longer the scorching heat of summer, but the cool promise of fall, where the work you've done all year starts to pay off. The harvest season is the most important time of the year. It's the culmination of months of work, and it's a time for the family to come together. You rise early, knowing the work ahead of you. The crops must be brought in before the first frost, and every day is spent in the fields. You gather the corn, the beans, and the squash, stacking them in piles to be stored away. You take stock of what you have, what you'll need, and what you can trade with neighbors for other essentials. The children help, though their hands aren't as strong as the adults. They pick the apples from the trees, collect the last of the vegetables, and help sort the grain. They may not understand the full weight of what's happening, but they feel the urgency in the air, the sense that this is the time to work, to prepare. The community comes together for the harvest, with neighbors pitching in to help gather the crops, sharing what they have in the spirit of survival. When the harvest is complete, you move on to preserving what you've gathered. Canning, salting, drying, these are the tasks that will keep you fed through the long winter months. Meat is smoked, fruits and vegetables are canned, and grain is stored in barrels, carefully sealed to keep pests away. It's back-breaking work, but it's necessary. You know that what you preserve now will sustain you in the months to come, when the fields are barren and the cold keeps you inside. Winter arrives with a fierce chill, and you can feel it in the air. The days grow shorter, and the work slows down, but the challenges of survival do not ease. The fire is constantly stoked to keep the family warm, and every scrap of wood you've collected throughout the year is used to fuel it. The cold seeps into the house, and you can feel it on your skin, no matter how many layers of clothing you wear. The floors are cold, the windows drafty, and every breath you take is visible in the freezing air. You and your family huddle together around the hearth, the fire crackling as you do what you can to stay warm. The work in the fields is done, but the tasks of maintaining the home never end. Winter is a time for repairing tools, knitting clothes, and mending the house. It's also a time for reflection. You spend more time indoors, where the lack of daylight makes the days feel long and drawn out. You share stories, sing songs, and work together to make sure the fire never goes out. But even in the dead of winter, you're always thinking ahead. The food you've preserved is running low, and by midwinter, you'll be depending solely on what you've stored. The animals you've kept are just as vulnerable as you are, and if the cold becomes too harsh, the herd will not survive. You don't think of spring just yet, but you feel it coming slowly, inevitably. You know that the cycle will repeat itself, and that your survival depends on what you did last year and what you'll do next. As the long winter night stretches on, you settle in beside your family, the weight of the day's work lifting off your shoulders. You have survived another day, another season, and though the next season looms with its own set of challenges, you face it with quiet determination. Because no matter the season, no matter the obstacles, you and your family will endure. As you step through the veil of time, leaving behind the comforts and complexities of modern life, you find yourself standing in the heart of colonial America. The world around you is raw and elemental, a land where nature still rules, and survival is not a given, but a hard-won victory. Every breath you take is sharp with the scent of wood smoke and the heavy scent of earth. The land here is unyielding, but so are the people who inhabit it. This world, harsh as it may be, is not just about scraping by. It is about the will to survive, adapt, and build something new. In many ways, life in the colonies was a battle against the elements, a test of endurance where every day was a challenge. But from that struggle, something remarkable was forged, something that would shape the course of history and lay the foundation for the future of a nation. Life in colonial America was nothing short of grueling. Each day began before the sun rose and continued long after it set, a relentless rhythm of physical labor. The people who lived here did not have the luxuries that we often take for granted. There was no electricity to light the dark nights, no running water to quench your thirst or wash away the grime of a hard day's work. The houses were simple, built from wood, stone, or mud, depending on what was available. In winter, the cold seeped into every corner of the house, no matter how tightly you closed the shutters. The fire, always crackling in the hearth, was the only thing that kept you warm, and the work of tending it was never ending. Food was scarce at times, and each meal had to be earned, whether it was planting crops, hunting game, or raising livestock. The task of putting food on the table never stopped. Every single thing had to be done by hand, from grinding grain into flour to raising and preserving vegetables and meat. The work was unyielding, but so were the people. They endured the harsh winters, the long summers, and the constant threat of disease. They faced it all with resilience, relying on their community and their own resourcefulness to get by. And in this shared struggle, something crucial was forged: a deep understanding of the land and an unbreakable sense of community. The early colonists were self-sufficient in a way that most modern people can hardly comprehend. In a world where the nearest town could be days away, and where the help of others was often beyond reach, these people had to rely on their own hands to build their homes, grow their food, make their clothes, and tend to their health. There were no supermarkets or doctors to turn to, and every day was a test of ingenuity and grit. The colonial household was a miniature world unto itself. Each member of the family played a vital role in maintaining the house and farm. The women and children worked the garden, the men tended to the animals, and everyone came together for the harvest. The work was hard, and the hours were long, but the rewards were also profound. The land that had once seemed so wild and inhospitable slowly began to yield the fruits of their labor. The sense of accomplishment that came from making something out of nothing, the bread you baked with your own hands, the clothes you spun and stitched together, the roof over your head that you built with the help of your neighbors, was a deep and unshakable pride. As you walk through the fields of corn, the rows of beans, and the garden where squash vines crawl along the ground, you realize just how important this self-sufficiency was. It was not just about surviving the day, but about building a life that was sustainable and lasting. The colonists didn't just adapt to their environment, they made it work for them. They understood the rhythms of the seasons, the cycles of the crops, the habits of the animals. They knew what the land could provide, and they worked tirelessly to extract those resources in ways that would allow them to endure. This legacy of self-sufficiency, of creating something from the raw materials of the land, would go on to shape the spirit of America for generations to come. It was a spirit that valued hard work, independence, and the ability to thrive against the odds. But as much as self-sufficiency was the backbone of colonial life, it was the strength of the community that truly held the colonies together. It wasn't enough to simply survive on your own. Survival depended on the people around you. The colonists relied on each other for everything from helping with the harvest to providing food in times of scarcity. They shared what they had, and in doing so, created bonds that went beyond family. When a barn needed raising, the whole community showed up. When a new home had to be built, neighbors worked side by side, each person contributing their labor to ensure the survival of the family that would live there. It was this spirit of mutual aid, of neighbors helping neighbors, that helped the colonies endure the hardships they faced. It was a way of life that transcended individual needs, where the survival of one meant the survival of all. The colonies were built on this foundation of cooperation, a lesson that would serve them well in the years to come. And yet, the community wasn't just about work. There were moments of joy and celebration as well. The harvest feast was a time to celebrate the fruits of a year's hard labor, a time to come together as a community and share in the bounty. Even in the darkest winters, when the cold seemed unbearable and food was scarce, the people of the colony knew how to find joy in the small moments, gathering by the fire to tell stories, to sing, to laugh, to share in the human connection that tied them together. It is this resilience, this determination to survive, that has carried through to modern America. The hardships faced by the colonists, though harsh, forged a strength and character that would form the very foundation of a nation. The values of hard work, independence, and cooperation are woven into the fabric of American society, still felt in the way communities come together in times of crisis and in the determination to overcome obstacles. In the face of adversity, the colonists found not only survival but a way of life that has influenced the way people in America live today. From the self-sufficiency of farming and craftsmanship to the bonds formed in the community, these early Americans laid the groundwork for the country that would one day rise from these very fields. The lessons they taught, the importance of resilience, the value of community, and the strength found in cooperation continue to echo through the generations. And even though life has changed in ways the colonists could never have imagined, the essence of their struggle and triumph remains. We can look back to their lives not just to understand the past, but to learn how their experiences shape the world we live in today. As you close your eyes, reflecting on the struggles and triumphs of the colonial era, you realize that the legacy of these people is alive in the heart of America. It is embedded in the very spirit of independence, community, and resilience that defines the nation today. You've walked in the footsteps of those who built this land, and their lessons taught through sweat, toil, and perseverance remain as vital and true as ever. As the days pass and the seasons change, it becomes clearer how the struggles of colonial life left an indelible mark on the people who lived through them. The challenges they faced, unpredictable weather, a lack of resources, the constant need to adapt and overcome shaped not just their way of life, but their very character. They lived with the understanding that survival was a day-to-day, sometimes hour-to-hour pursuit. Yet, despite these hardships, something remarkable took root. A sense of self-reliance, resilience, and an unshakable belief in the importance of community. The colonists' lives were simpler by modern standards, but within that simplicity lay profound wisdom. They knew the value of hard work, not as a burden but as a way to carve out a life. They understood that the sweat of their brow was not just about sustenance for the body but about building something meaningful, a home, a family, a community. They didn't have the luxuries of modern society, but they had the foundation of something far more powerful, a deep connection to the land, and a tight-knit network of support that bound families together, one meal, one task, one season at a time. Through shared labor, whether in the fields, in the barn, or around the hearth, the people of colonial America learned the importance of working together for the common good. No one person could do it all alone. Every individual, no matter how young or old, had a role to play in the survival of the family. When harvest season came, it was a collective effort. Barn raisings and community gatherings were common events where neighbors helped one another build, repair, or preserve what they had. There was a quiet dignity in this life, an understanding that your effort meant something more than just personal gain. It was part of something larger, a way of life that could endure. This resilience, born of necessity, has woven itself into the fabric of what we now call America. The values of survival, community support, and perseverance continue to resonate deeply in modern society, whether we realize it or not. We might not have to endure the same daily hardships the colonists faced, but their lessons still speak to us. In times of crisis, we come together. In times of need, we lend a hand. The spirit of cooperation that defined colonial life is present in the neighborhoods we live in the communities we build, and even in the larger world of business, politics, and family. In many ways, the colonists' ability to adapt, to endure, and to find joy in the midst of hardship is a lesson that can never be forgotten. In our fast-paced, technology-driven world, it's easy to forget the importance of the basics, the value of hard work, the beauty of simple moments spent with family, and the strength that comes from relying on one another. But as we look back on the lives of those early Americans, we see a reflection of qualities that are timeless and necessary for every generation. The values that helped the colonists survive have a deep relevance today. Whether it's the value of self-sufficiency in a world where supply chains can break down, or the importance of community in times of global challenges, the lessons from colonial America are just as crucial as ever. We've come a long way since those days, but we can still find wisdom in the struggles of our forebears. As you close your eyes and reflect on the lives of those who lived in colonial America, you can't help but feel a sense of quiet awe. Despite the hardships they endured, despite the lack of conveniences we now take for granted, they survived and built the foundation for the future. Their resilience, their unwavering work ethic, and their deep sense of community have shaped the world we live in today. The strength of those early colonists was not just in their ability to withstand the elements or to endure hard labor, it was in their ability to create something lasting from nothing. Their legacy is not just in the buildings they left behind or the crops they grew, it's in the very values they embodied: self-reliance, perseverance, and the importance of working together for the good of all. These are the qualities that have carried us through the centuries. They continue to serve as a reminder that survival, both personal and collective, is built on the foundation of hard work, shared labor, and the unyielding will to push forward. In the end, the story of colonial life is not just a tale of struggle, it's a story of strength, of enduring values, and of the quiet triumph of the human spirit. And as you drift off to sleep, you may find yourself inspired by the resilience of those who came before, knowing that their journey, marked by determination, hope, and the drive to survive, has left a legacy that still impacts the world we live in today.